Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra on Wednesday signed the Supreme Decree calling for general elections to be held on April 11, 2021. The United Nations Secretary-General is conducting a process to verify that the United States has met all the conditions for its withdrawal from the World Health Organization. The Ivorian Prime Minister has passed away just days after returning to the country from France. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Peru, where President Martin Vizcarra on Wednesday signed the Supreme Decree calling general elections to be held on April 11, 2021. In a televised address to the nation, Vizcarra recalled that since he assumed the presidency in March 2018, following the resignation of Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, he had promised to complete his mandate and lead a frank, transparent and honest administration. The president noted that come April 2021, Peruvians will be able to elect a new president, vice presidents, congressmen and Andean parliament representatives.
I am here showing the country the Supreme Decree that says general elections are called for April 11, 2021, for the election of the President of the Republic, Vice Presidents, Congress members, and Peruvian representatives to the Indian Parliament.
Chilean police have launched investigations into police brutality against Fabiola Campillay and Gustavo Gatica. The announcement was made by the Director of Police Investigations, Hector Espinosa, following a hearing by the Human Rights Committee of the Chamber of Deputies. Fabiola Campillay and Gustavo Gatica suffered police attacks during protests late last year. Fabiola, who was on her way to work at the time, was hit in the face with a tear gas canister which left her disfigured. Meanwhile, Gustavo was left blind after a burst of rubber bullets were also targeted at his face. Espinosa did not give further details on the ongoing investigation, although he noted that the institution which he represents would deliver the necessary answers that the country demands in the face of these flagrant human rights violations. This Wednesday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro called to celebrate the 16th anniversary of the Operation Miracle mission. During an act to mark the anniversary, President Maduro analysed the progress of the Farma Patria project, which provides free medical supplies for people in need. He also highlighted the importance of the last 16 years of work deployed by the Miracle mission, which has restored sight to thousands of Venezuelans and others across the region, all provided with these medical services free of charge. Maduro also stressed the legacy of Commanders Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, who came up with this project. This Wednesday, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez reported the death of 4 new COVID-19 patients in the last 24 hours and explained the impact that imported cases are having on the country's coronavirus statistics. The Vice President noted that the latest fatalities were people who have been infected after coming into contact with Venezuelans who illegally crossed into the country from Ecuador and Colombia in the majority of cases. Those crossing through illegal trails are now the main source of COVID-19 transmission in the country, and the Venezuelan government has called to limit contact with anyone returning from abroad in order to protect Venezuelan nationals.
Unfortunately, one of the deceased was infected through contact with a family member who returned from Ecuador. This family member, President, entered via an illegal trail. Note the trifleness, the cost of the lives of family members, friends, by those who arrive through the illegal trails to a community, infecting their neighbors or mom, a dad, a brother or a sister. Here we see the perverse effect of maintaining these illegal trails.
About 100 Nicaraguan migrants stranded in Panama amid the COVID-19 pandemic have returned to their home country. The Director General of Migration and Foreigners at the Nicaraguan Interior Ministry stated that the repatriation operation took place at the Peñas Blancas border post with Costa Rica. The Ministry of Health, in compliance with the established protocols, conducted an examination of the arrivals in order to rule out any COVID-19 symptoms. Nicaraguan Vice President Rosario Murillo recently noted that the safe and orderly return of those citizens stranded in third countries during the pandemic is a political commitment of the Nicaraguan government. The Colombian government has rejected the proposal of the National Liberation Army to establish a bilateral ceasefire for 90 days to help fight the coronavirus and re-establish peace. In response to the proposal, President Iván Duque described the ELN as a terrorist group and demanded the release of hostages and an end to the guerrilla group's operations in the country. The ELN explained that the initiative responds to the call made by the United Nations to declare an immediate ceasefire in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. In view of this situation, opposition Senator Iván Cepeda stressed that a bilateral ceasefire would bring relief to many territories and regions of the country that are suffering the consequences of the conflict as well as the pandemic. Meanwhile, the NGO Paz y Reconciliación acknowledged that ELN has made several gestures in favor of peace in Colombia. After studies of several rivers in Ecuador's capital, Quito, experts agree that 2 are contaminated with traces of COVID-19. According to a study from the University of Las Americas, the samples which were collected on June 5th showed that traces of the novel coronavirus were found in the rivers Machangara and Monjas, probably carried by the wastewater dumped in these rivers that cross the city of Quito. The Dominican Republic's President-elect Luis Abinader announced that his administration's priorities will be the health crisis, the economy and education. According to his campaign manager, all national sectors will be incorporated into the recovery process following the pandemic, regardless of their political or religious beliefs. He also said that Abinader and his team are already working to deal with the health crisis that is currently affecting the Caribbean nation. The president-elect has voiced his determination to change the Dominican educational model, which he considers only leads students to academic failure, as it generates high levels of desertion and offers no employment opportunities. The Cuban Medical Brigade working in Jamaica saved 823 lives in June through its contribution to the fight against COVID-19. The health workers carried out over 48,000 medical consultations and over 56,000 nursing procedures. Despite the limitations brought on by the pandemic, Cuban health professionals performed 366 surgeries, 86 of which for patients with eye problems, as part of the Operation Miracle program to restore sight. In the context of the start of the post-pandemic stage, the Cuban health collaborators offered an update on the current epidemiological situation and the work scenario in order to increase risk perception to combat COVID-19. The Haitian Education Minister provided an update on the resumption of school activities on August 10th and the actions programmed by the ministry in order to complete the 2019-2020 academic year. Minister Pierre-Jossieu Agnew-Cadet recalled that according to the calendar established by the ministry, only 9th grade students expected to undertake state exams will return to schools on August 10th, while all other classes will resume on August 17th. The end of the academic year is scheduled for October 9th, 2020, and the 2020-2021 academic year will officially start on November 9th. Regarding overcrowded classrooms, the minister recommended implementing rotation in the operations of public and private schools, which should hold classes for 3 to 4 days per week, including weekends, and alternating small groups to respect physical distancing. And we're taking a very short break now, so don't go away. United Nations Secretary-General announced on Wednesday that a process is being conducted to verify that all the conditions for its withdrawal from the World Health Organization are met by the United States.
The United States of America notified the Secretary-General in his capacity as the depository of the 1946 Constitution of the World Health Organization of its withdrawal from the World Health Organization effective July 6, 2021. The United States is a party to the World Health Organization's Constitution since 21 June 1948. The U.S.'s participation in the World Health Organization was accepted by the World Health Assembly with certain conditions set out by the United States for its eventual withdrawal from WHO. Those conditions include giving a 1-year notice and fully meeting the payments of assessed financial obligations. The Secretary-General, in his capacity as the depository, is in the process of verifying with the WHO whether all the conditions for such withdrawal are met.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump signed the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement at the White House this Wednesday. The agreement, which replaces the North American Free Trade Agreement of 1994 and came into effect on July 1st, was hailed by both presidents as representing a much better deal for the three countries. After having met privately, President López Obrador and President Trump held a joint press conference at the White House and pointed to the historic relations between the United States and Mexico. The Mexican president also stressed that relations have improved and thanked President Trump for not seeking to impose the Monroe Doctrine on his country and for respecting Mexico's sovereignty. And US President Donald Trump described the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement as a historic victory, replacing the former North American Free Trade Agreement, which he said was one of the worst trade deals in history.
The Prime Minister in a little while. While NAFTA slashed wages and eliminated jobs, the USMCA includes groundbreaking labor protections for workers in both nations. This landmark agreement will bring countless jobs from overseas back to North America, and our countries will be very big beneficiaries. We are already seeing the fruits because it started. It's the largest, fairest, and most advanced trade deal ever reached by any country, and it will bring enormous prosperity to both American and Mexican workers and Canada. We want to thank everybody. We'll have a separate...
Meanwhile, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador noted the contribution of the Mexican community of about 38 million in the United States.
And it is also well-known history of geopolitics, this neighborhood we have, and economic circumstances of both of our nations have promoted in a very natural manner a process of migration of Mexican men and women coming here to the United States. And here we've been able to create a community of about 38 million people, including the children of Mexican parents. It is a community of working people, good people, people who have come here to make a living in a very honest fashion, and they have contributed so much to the development of this great nation.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the war-torn Lugansk region in eastern Ukraine, where 6 people were killed by a forest fire. Hundreds of firefighters and rescue workers rushed to battle the fire, while more than 120 houses were incinerated. According to emergency services, firefighters initially managed to control the flames, but the fire spread again, helped by gusts of wind and soaring temperatures, and eventually raged over an area of some 80 hectares. Water-bombing planes were also sent to the scene of the blaze.
People have lost everything. It is not only their houses, but also their documents, their money, their valuables. All is lost. This must be evaluated and people must be compensated.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lishan described the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization on Wednesday as another example of the United States being a pursuer of unilateralism and abandoning its international obligations.
As the international fight against COVID-19 is now at a crucial stage, it is an international consensus that to support the WHO is to support international cooperation and to support saving lives. The U.S. withdrawal will undercut international combat against the pandemic, which will have particularly severe impact on developing countries that are in urgent need of international support. We urge the U.S. to fulfill its due international responsibilities and obligations and behave as a responsible major country. China calls on the international community to further consolidate the consensus of multilateralism, increase political support and financial input to the WHO, and jointly safeguard global public health security.
And in China, college entrance exams continued on Wednesday in Xinjiang County in East China's Anhui province after severe flooding trapped examinees and delayed 2 tests scheduled for Tuesday. On the first day of the exam, a river overflowed its banks and flooded downtown streets, with most examinees unable to reach their schools. To ensure the exams ran smoothly, the local public security department launched emergency traffic routes while building pontoon bridges overnight at low-lying areas near the exam sites. The country's nationwide annual college entrance exam is known as one of the hardest in the world. The Philippines confirmed the number of coronavirus cases had soared past 50,000 on Wednesday. The figure is troubling for a nation that has reopened an economy on the brink of recession while still struggling to combat the pandemic. The Department of Health reported more than 2,000 new cases on Wednesday, while the death toll surpasses 1,000. The Philippines' caseload is the second largest in Southeast Asia, where the combined number of infections has surpassed those in China, where the pandemic emerged. President Rodrigo Duterte eased a tough lockdown in the capital of more than 12 million people on June 1st, after the economy shrank slightly in the first quarter of this year. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Ivorian Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly passed away on Wednesday, just days after returning to the country from France. The Prime Minister arrived in the Ivory Coast on June 2nd after a 2-month stay in France, where he had been receiving treatment for a heart condition. President Alassane Ouattara noted that the 61-year-old Prime Minister became unwell during a weekly cabinet meeting and was taken to a hospital where he passed away. Gon Coulibaly had been selected as the presidential candidate of Ivory Coast's ruling party for the upcoming election. At least 43 police officers were injured and 24 people arrested in Serbia following disturbances from Tuesday night and into Wednesday at the Serbian Parliament building. The public unrest in Belgrade came following the announcement by Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić that COVID-19 restrictions would be reimposed due to rising cases. Police tried to disperse demonstrators who attacked the Serbian Parliament for over an hour, attempting to storm the building. Serbian Police Chief Vladimir Rebic noted that the situation was controlled after tear gas was launched and with the assistance of the mounted police. He also stressed that riots were led by members of a far-right movement. Meanwhile, Serbian health authorities have recorded over 17,000 coronavirus cases and a death toll of 341. Lebanese supporters of Hezbollah and the Communist Party held a protest at the entrance of Beirut's international airport to denounce the visit of the U.S. Central Command Chief Kenneth McKenzie to the country.
We want to say to the American that it is forbidden for him to come to Lebanon. It is forbidden to celebrate these insolent celebrations. The Americans starved us and made the people homeless, and are still besieging us and starving us, and have helped the Zionist enemy to strike us over the years. It is true that we are facing an economic blockade, but it is impossible to have a blockade against our dignity. We will always be able to have honorable positions against them, which they are not used to.
Iranian health authorities reported over 2,600 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday. Meanwhile, health authorities reported the highest single-day death toll since the outbreak of the pandemic in the country on Tuesday, with 200 fatalities. The total COVID-19 figures now stand at over 248,000 cases and more than 12,000 fatalities. Meanwhile, over 200,000 patients have recovered from the virus. Iran and Syria signed a military agreement on Wednesday on Syria's air defense systems. Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, and Syria's Defense Minister Ali Ayoub signed the military deal in Damascus, which aims to strengthen Syria's air defense systems. The two officials also discussed the current situation in Syria and the need for foreign forces who enter the country illegally to withdraw from Syrian territory.
A comprehensive military security agreement was signed meant to boost military and technical cooperation in different fields of the two friends and brotherly countries' armed forces, and also meant to improve coordination between the two sides to confront increasing dangers and Takfiri terrorism supported by international and regional powers.
During a UN Security Council video conference on Wednesday, Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed that foreign interference in the conflict in Libya has reached unprecedented levels.
Excellencies, time is not on our side in Libya. The conflict has entered a new phase, with foreign interference reaching unprecedented levels, including in the delivery of sophisticated equipment and the number of mercenaries involved in the fighting.
In Ethiopia, at least 239 people have been killed in protests held since last week, following the murder of popular singer and activist Hachalu Hundessa. The singer, who was a hero to many Oromo people, was shot dead by unknown attackers on June 29th, heightening ethnic tensions throughout the country. Protests broke out in the capital, Addis Ababa, as well as the surrounding Oromia region, which is the homeland of the country's largest ethnic group, who have long felt economically and politically sidelined in the diverse nation. Police in Addis Ababa had previously reported 10 deaths in the capital, but over 160 new deaths have been reported since last weekend. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesu English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.